Hello, and welcome to this screencast on Worlds Colliding, Chapter 24 in Bentley and Ziegler's Traditions and Encounters, 5th edition. This chapter features a look at the Americas, North and South, in the age of European colonization. And it will bring out one, two, and three, all three of the big ideas in the early modern era. Let's take a look. So the focus here, as you're reading, is on colonial America. This is the early modern period in the Americas is a time period of intense colonization. So you want to just kind of keep in mind what does that mean throughout the whole chapter. So colonial means that European countries colonized. So they settled, exploited, governed places in the Americas. In the course of that, they created and used new labor systems, created new ethnic and racial identities, which were part of strategies of dominance. This is the era when white supremacy emerges. Throughout the class, I've been telling my students, and if you have someone else, your teacher might have been telling you that race is a modern idea and it hasn't really emerged yet, depending on when you're studying. Well, now's the time where we can see modern ideas of race conditioned on colonialism and slavery emerging into the modern world with devastating consequences, of course. And then thinking of labor, race, ethnicity as being interrelated, we have production of goods for capitalist markets. So the image here from Bentley and Ziegler's chapter 24 shows us one of the silver mines. I think it's the Potosi silver mine in what's today Bolivia. Silver and sugar be the two most important commodities in this era that are part of global commerce. So a few words that would be useful. So, globalizing networks is one of the key concepts, one of the three big ideas for this time period. So, in this screencast, I have italicized the actual language from the course and exam description. I'll let you read that on your own, and I'll narrate the other parts. So, what we see here in this chapter is the migration of people across the Atlantic Ocean, both settlers or who are sometimes indentured and sometimes free, and then forced migrants in the form of enslaved people trafficked in the transatlantic slave trade. There'll be more on that, the African slave trade, in the next chapter, which is on Africa and the Atlantic world, although you'll see some of it happening here. There's also new syncretic forms of Christianity formed as European settlers bring Christian traditions with them. Already learned about the Columbian Exchange in chapter 22, but we'll see the effects of it on the Americas here. This image, which you may have seen in other textbooks, it's very commonly used to show this, is an image that was produced by indigenous Mexican people, or indigenous people in what's today Mexico, Nahua people. We might also think of as Aztec, or sometimes thought of as Aztec, as part of a pictorial and text history of their communities that they created with Spanish priests in the 1500s. And this is a drawing from one of those histories, what's called the Florentine Codex, showing the effects of smallpox. One thing that I've only recently learned about these images, is that this right here, that these are meant as like talk bubbles, and they're like in a graphic history or graphic novel, and they were accompanied by text. So this woman here is a healer, a traditional healer, and she is trying to heal this person using traditional incantations and or words of comfort. We have that in here, the person who's very, very sick. So smallpox, along with European livestock in North America, especially East Coast North America, is responsible for a lot of fatality amongst American Indian peoples. This first part you've probably heard of. The bottom part might be new to you, but European animals were kind of let loose, and they destroyed a lot of Native American gardens and agriculture. And this is a way that people didn't even realize what they were doing to other people. The other aspect of the Columbian Exchange to keep in mind is that cash crops were transported to the New World, planted in what to Europeans was the New World, and then became part of global commodity flows. So sugarcane is an example of the Columbian Exchange. The sugar plant was brought to the Caribbean and Brazil. The sugar cane plants there produced tremendous amounts of sugar, which were then traded throughout the world. I have this picture of this print up in my classroom. And I think it's really important for world history students who are not indigenous themselves to kind of bear in mind in their writing that there are millions and millions of indigenous Americans or people of indigenous ancestry here right now, not just in your classes, but especially in places in Latin America where there are several countries where most people have indigenous ancestry. So you want to avoid overemphasizing what happens. It's a balance because there's a huge tragedy, and in places like central Mexico, there's huge population loss. But those places had large populations to begin with, and many Mexican people today have indigenous ancestry. In some places, I think genocide is an appropriate word, like in the Caribbean, where indigenous cultures and peoples are nearly completely extinct, were nearly completely extinguished. But in other places, that word's a little too strong because it implies that there weren't survivors. I know it's tough because we want to use a word that's strong and hard hitting to describe the negative effects and the carelessness of the lives of others that was part of European colonialism. But on the other hand, we need to remember we are still here. All right. Globalizing networks, though, also includes commodities, and I've already talked about sugar. Tobacco would be similar, produced in North America and in the Caribbean. And then the other extremely important commodity would have been silver, which becomes part of global economic exchanges, global capital flows. Most of the silver eventually winds up in China, where it was being used as currency, but silver being produced in colonial Peru slash Bolivia. What's today Bolivia, part of it was in what was labeled as Peru, so it's a little complicated. But Potosi here is actually kind of in Bolivia today on the border, near the border with Peru. And then in Zacatecas, Mexico. So those two places. Do you want to pay attention to the silver? Silver and sugar. Kids can get a little distracted sometimes because gold, is the highest metal in the Olympics, and cotton becomes the most important slave produced good in American history for US, for North America. But in this time period, the sugar and silver production are much more significant. So keep that in mind and look for how that works out. These commodities are produced using various kinds of coerced labor, and you have 5 of them here. Um, Typically, you'll be in a situation where you will need to use 1 or 2 as an example. So here's my advice for you: would be that chattel slavery is something that you have to know. You have to know how chattel slavery, slavery in the Americas, where enslaved people were treated as property, similar to cattle. The words are connected. You need to know how chattel slavery is a different kind of labor system compared to other labor systems, including these wage labor systems that will become more common later, and other kinds of traditional slavery. And then, if you know one other that you can use in situations, you will be okay. So you can pay attention. I think it's important to see these things as what they are: labor systems. That people are being forced to labor in order to increase economic production. There are people who are being forced to labor as personal servants for European colonists, and that is a kind of social dominance. And that's important, but it is far less significant in terms of the number of people involved and in terms of economic production than people who are forced to labor to produce huge amounts of quantities for global markets. So you want to think of these things as labor systems that have social effects. Well, social effects are, of course, very important. Okay, and we see that here. This right here is an important concept for students to try to wrap their minds around. And that is that racial identities, the way we think of them in the modern world, centered on a black white binary, that those were created, those came into being during this time period of colonization in the Americas. And there's a lot more going on than just that. And there's antecedents. You can see things, kinds of anti-blackness in European society that existed before this time period. And then it's more than just this, because science gets involved and things actually get a lot worse before they get better in the next time period. The next time period in world history goes up to 1900, and they're pretty much at their worst in terms of like the worst kinds of dehumanizing racist ideas and images at the end of that time period. So, I mean, I know 2020 is not a great time to tell people things can get worse, but they can. So but you really want to take that first chevron there and wrap your mind around it. In the Spanish and Portuguese colonies, there are tiers of racial identification, where not all white people are at the same level. Peninsulares. Oh, my Spanish pronunciation is so bad there. Sorry. My apologies. The Peninsulares from Spain or from Portugal itself would rank higher than people who are native to the Americas but of European ancestry. Okay. Mestizo means mixed, and there's in Spanish, and so there's a variety of mixtures of ancestries that people could have. And that will all get somewhat complex. But it's just worth knowing that those categories of race were also influenced by laws, just like slavery was influenced by laws. So that's a big idea there. So you're looking for new ethnic and racial identities that come out of this. Okay, a lot of text here. You can pause and read it if you want, but I'm going to summarize it. So again, the italicized comes from the course and exam description. So the first one is talking about how there was conquest, where Europeans arrived, claimed a right of conquest, claimed it, and then took control of the land, and they competed with each other. That happened quickly, but it's worth noting there's real limits to how much they controlled. When you look at the map, there'll be these huge splashes of color, like Spain controlled all this territory. It's like they have a lot of control over people in some areas, but the further away you get from the colonial capitals, the less so. That's true. So there are limits to control. It's also true that Creoles, meaning people from European ancestry born and living in the Americas, often had a lot of local control. That's more true in the English colonies. You want to compare those, where there's more self-government for white settlers. But it's also true by necessity in the Spanish colonies too, because of the distances that are involved. And then diverse subjects means diverse just in all kinds of different ways. So these empires are never completely like locked down from the top down. So you kind of want to pay attention to both pieces of that. Oops, sorry, we've already seen that, haven't we? This is one of the best primary source images. It's almost as good as that handsome silver llama. There's a lot of good images, of course, but this is a feather painting. Sometimes people say it's more like a mosaic. It's feathers arranged to create this image. It was created by indigenous artists in what's today Mexico, who had converted to Christianity, and it's a kind of syncretism because it shows an indigenous art form, feather painting, combined with the Christian religion, which was brought by Spanish settlers. So religion here has an important role to play, or played an important role. Some people will look at it and say, Christianity is motivating this exploration and colonization. And I mean, that's true to a degree. I think you can also think of it as like justification after the fact, that people wanted to do it for other reasons and they're justifying it. But either way, especially in the Spanish colonies, the Catholic Church is an important institution of colonial control. In the English colonies, you have kind of different kinds of Christians coming, so it's not as monolithic, But in the Spanish colonies, it is the Catholic Church, which comes not just as a faith, but also as an institution. They have courts and, keep records and do these things. All right. So that is what we have. Don't really, that's an extra slide that I'll include in the deck for people to take a look at, or we can talk about in class. All right, so that's what I have. So take a look for those three themes of global exchange, new forms of production, which are creating new social identities, and then state consolidation and expansion. All right, thank you.